Welcome to the first episode of um, Full Court Press with Coach Q, and I am with an amazing young lady uh, who I call my twin, Kristeena Alexander. Um, a little bit about her: Kristeena is a mentor, entrepreneur, and business manager. She is a former professional basketball player, coach, coached the collegiate level of basketball, and guided countless female athletes to success in the profession. Her experience and wisdom has successfully navigated the high stakes of high pressure world of collegiate basketball, which we definitely know that ins and outs. She's a very creative thinker, knows how to drive and deliver results within team settings. She has a skill for creating vision and leading others, providing her client services that they trust and rely on. Building strong leaders with diversity throughout and action continues to be the essence of her mission. Okay. In 2014, Kristeena, my sister, launched Progress Recruiting, through which mentors and navigate student athletes and their parents through the challenging college athletic decision-making process. This service offers through Progress Recruiting inside life skill development, private coaching, mentorship, health and wellness, and financial planning. She has the remarkable capability to effectively guide others through their journey of basketball, both one-on-one during the speaking engagement. Kristeenas is passionate about empowering individuals to make the most of their career athletically and professionally. Welcome, my
Appreciate
sister.
it. Yes, thank you for having me, Q.
Man,
This is an
so
opportunity. Yeah, so thank you for this. I appreciate you having me. First,
oh, appreciate you being here and accepting to do this. And I just want to say, to start off right now, who is Kristeena Alexander? We read about her, but who is the essence of her?
oh, that's a great question. I don't know if we have enough time for that, Q, but I'll just start by saying, listen, I think we all have journeys in our lives, and we get to certain points where we just say we thank all of the people that have been mentors, coaches, family members, parents, sisters, uncles, whomever that may be. And I've been fortunate and blessed to be in this position I am today, speaking with you, sitting here and just kind of sharing my story. Just like, Q, we met, I can't even count the years,
Yeah.
just being someone who in the sport of basketball played and was successful at each and every stage, whether that was high school and college and collegiately. And so, basketball has been a vehicle for me for so long that, it's taken on a different path. And so right now, obviously, like we said, I've coached 10 years in the game. I feel like my sweat, blood, and tears and everything else was there, and just learned a lot about what basketball is, and then, what the next step is from there. I actually, after 10 years, I actually started my own business, which is
Mm.
progressrecruiting.com, plug. And it was basically an opportunity for me to continue to do what we were doing as coaches. Obviously, with the NCAA, there are certain rules and restrictions. And so starting Progress Recruiting for me meant everything,
Mm.
because I began to work one-on-one with student athletes, their parents, and really getting an understanding of what they want and need, and not feeling like I had to only call at certain times, and stick to the rules. Sometimes I like to color outside of the lines legally, but sometimes you need to spend more time than what the NCAA allots. So that's how Progress Recruiting started for me. And from there, it has kind of just blossomed into so many more other things. And one of those things is really helping young ladies who exhaust their eligibility. When I first started Progress Recruiting, it was more about taking, those individuals, those young ladies who were in seventh, eighth, ninth, and 10th grade who were trying to get into college. And
Mm-hmm.
then that was awesome. That was, I'd been there. I understood what the lingo, what the process required. And then I realized after they exhausted their eligibility, that was it. Too many of them said, "Hey, Coach K, I need a job. What do I do now? What do I do next?" And so that's where Progress Recruiting is now, and in really helping these young ladies who have exhausted all 4 years or five, and really helping them transition into, quote unquote, the adult world. What's your career path? What are you doing mentally? What's going to help you financially? Because mom and dad and grandma and whomever want to know, do you have a job? Can you support yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And so really mapping out, detailing what that looks like. And I like to think of it as the transition. And so
Hmm.
that's currently what I'm doing now. I'm also the VP of Merit Management Group with my business partner, Stephanie Stanley. So meritsports.org if you have not heard of us. But we also, at the Final Four, we put on an event where we actually mentor young ladies who are headed into the draft. We just signed 2 new young ladies, Joyna Holmes and Kennedy Carter. And, you know, they'll be doing their WNBA thing, but really helping these young ladies who have the potential of being drafted and those who will not. Again, what is the transition from where you are now into the next phase of your life, which is a career, something that you love to do, that mentally, socially, financially, everything needs to be on point. And so that's currently what I'm doing in a nutshell.
All right. So to piggyback on that transition piece, that's one thing that me transitioning out of coaching, I've transitioned into the entrepreneurial role too. And um, basketball is so volatile for us. And so one of the things I've talked about is a lot walking into is I'm the transition coach now because I've been talking about how to transition and going through the stages of transition. And that's why I publish so many books. That's why I speak. That's why I do so many other things. And I never wanted to put, you know, my life in one basket. And I knew that from leaving Mississippi State, I would never put my life in another person's hands. So talk about that transition from one thing to the other. What were some of the processes and some of the things that, you know, and I'm saying for those out there that are scared to process into entrepreneurship because they want that steady check or they don't think they can do anything other than coach basketball or do whatever they're doing. What does that look like? And what was that process for you?
Wow. I think that's a great question. I think everyone has a different journey, a different process. For me, it was somewhat unexpected. I knew when I first got into coaching, to be quite honest with you, I never ever wanted to coach. It was my former assistants who encouraged me. They always used to say, Kay, you're a leader. And I'd always say, I just want to win games. Like, I just want to let me do my part, play my role. And so I think the leadership was something that was always in me. I just didn't know how much it was a driving factor. And so transition piece, I didn't expect to leave coaching. I think maybe in my 6th or 7th year, I really had focused my attentions on becoming a head coach. And you and I both know we all have aspirations to be that. When the opportunity comes, you take it. If it never comes, that doesn't mean that your impact is diminished or unfulfilled or unsuccessful. It just means that at that time, that wasn't for you. And so I knew maybe heading into my 6th or 7th year that I wanted to do more. I loved coaching. I coached at, 5 different schools and underneath a plethora of head coaches and student athletes and administrators and all those good things. I just knew I wanted to do more on a one-on-one level. I really appreciate the relationships that I built one-on-one. Team settings are important, but I felt like I thrived in those settings. And so that transition was scary. I had no idea when it was going to happen. It happened. And when it did, I must say, honestly, financially, I was in a space that I could do that. But mentally and in terms of resources, I will have to be very honest that I wasn't. I didn't have enough people in my circle that could say, well, maybe you need to consider this versus that. And, I didn't even know how to spell the word entrepreneur. You couldn't ask me in 2014, 2013, what that was. It was something that took a lot of, I was humbled. I had to study. I had to seek out the information and knowledge and the people that I thought that I aligned with or connected with. And so I did that. Maybe for like the first year and a half, it was just seeking out people who I saw online or maybe someone that had connected, shout out to my mom in terms of the resources she helped provide me with. But it was just connecting with people. And it was difficult. At times, I shook my head and said, maybe I need to just go back to coaching. The check was good. We get paid once a week. And so you have to really kind of figure out where you are at that particular time. And at that particular time, I wanted more. So I had to sacrifice and be okay with not having with what I was accustomed to for so long. Sometimes I think we do things and it becomes a cycle and we don't even think about how we're doing it or whether or not it's continuing to feed us or whether or not it makes us happy. And so we just keep doing it until we realize that it no longer feeds us. And so The transition for me was not easy, but I wouldn't change it for anything,
Yeah.
because, along each stage, I was able to connect and grow and just really step outside my comfort zone. And so that led me into, again, I started out with one vision with Progress Recruiting, and then realizing in year one, and then in year two, and then in talking with, I had international clients as well as, clients here in the States. And that was a challenge, the language barrier and just the timing. And so it's really just trying to figure out what's most important to you. How do I get there from A to B? Direct path. And then really aligning yourself with people who can continue to help you with each stage, whether that is someone who's an assignment or an advisor, and, just really leaning on them. And so that was helpful in my transition into where I am now. I have some folks that I consult, just piggyback off, their successes and their failures. And then I have some people who aren't really that successful, but it's just an ear that I can bounce ideas. And they say, well, you might want to think about this, Coach K, or you might want to think about that. So my process is continues to evolve. It never stops. I think that's one thing about, transition and going from one career and one industry to the next, is that you utilize those skill sets that we learned in coaching, that we honed, that we weren't good at, that we thought, I don't know if I want to step into that realm. You utilize those as you move on to the next step. Nothing ever dies. It's just continue to utilize and grow with it along the way.
So to piggyback on that, I will say this: as a transition coach, every person needs a coach.
Yes.
Every person needs a coach.
Repeat it, Q.
Okay, every person needs a coach. So just the plug out there, transition coach here. But one of the things that that I heard you say is that you had to sacrifice to gain.
Mm-hmm. You did.
And so I feel like so many of us want to just right away gain and don't think that there's no process that you're going to have to sacrifice. There's always sacrifice. There's no get rich scheme. There's no get to the top fast scheme. There's a sacrifice in everything. And so with that, I want to ask you, in your business, what are some of the things that, as a Black woman in this business,
mm-hmm.
from coaching to now what you're doing as an entrepreneur, what are some of the sacrifices and struggles that you've had to take, and some of the losses and wins that you've had in that process? That makes sense.
No, that makes sense. Sure. Well, I think first and foremost, financially, as you know, and as I know, in coaching, the financial component is stable. I mean, obviously you're paid a salary, regardless if you win 32 games or if you win 3. And so that money is paid up front. So that's one of the things that I had to sacrifice from a mental perspective, that was no longer going to be my norm. That I had to understand that whatever I worked for, whatever young ladies that I was able to connect with and bring on board as a potential client, that was going to be the financial component. It wasn't going to be, someone's not going to pay me. I'm my own boss now. So I'm not waiting on someone to cut the check. Everything that whatever I was actively doing, whether that was thinking about my next move, putting it into play, applying it, application, whether it was emails or phone calls,
Mm-hmm.
that was the sacrifice. That now I was working solely for myself. I was my own boss. And when that's kind of cliche, I'm my own boss, but you really are. Financially, insurance-wise, being an entrepreneur, depending on what state you live in, depending on what your LLC is, kind of really understanding on how that all factors in. And so I think financially, I had to really get to a point where I had to just say, this is where I'm at. I have to be okay with this, because the reward at the end is going to be greater than what I'm doing right here in this month 1 or month 2. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was probably, financially was the first one. The second one was relationships, really understanding that in the collegiate world,
Yes.
is, hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you. But you really have a connection with that person.
Yeah. A lot of fake.
Okay, at the Final Four is great. And obviously the WBCA puts on things here and there. And I think, we try to connect as a group, as a network. But when you're really trying to, put your mission, the passion and purpose into play, into the real world, and really trying to connect with people who have no idea what basketball is or your success is, it's the relationship component. And I realized that, for some people, they weren't a part of my, they were not a part of my network.
Mm-hmm.
And being okay with that, saying,
Yeah.
that's okay. Thank you for your whatever you could provide, and then move on. And then really aligning with those people that wanted to be on board, that were willing to take the time to talk to you at 4 a.m., that were willing to tell you, I don't agree with you. I'm still support you, but I don't agree. You might want to rethink that. And so I think relationships, those were key, because those were the things that when I was down, when I failed, they were the ones to say, keep going. That's all right. Keep going. I just recently put out a post on my Instagram in terms of setting your table and making sure that the pieces that you have on your table are in the right space. And so that deals directly with your relationships, whether that person, again, is an advisor or an assignment, someone you're mentoring, someone that's mentoring you, mentor-mentee relationships. It's key, because you can have all the resources in the world. Like you said, we all need a coach.
And so with that, I was working on a post last night. And so that entrepreneurial role, it never stops. And so, and I tell people, I've made a lot of people a lot of money. I've made a lot of people a lot of money coaching, and I really haven't seen any of it. So if I'm going to work that hard for someone else, you better believe I'm going to work 3 times harder for myself and my family as an entrepreneur.
Right.
And so with that, tell me a little bit about some of your habits that you relearned or unlearned to relearn as an entrepreneur, some of the habits that you have to be successful, because I think a lot of people don't want to be entrepreneurs because they have to change habits, and those habits are a lot harder as an entrepreneur than as a normal person. I call it now,
Right.
a normal person, because being an entrepreneur is not normal.
No.
Mentally and emotionally. But some what are some of your success habits that you have that the people can take from you?
I think first and foremost, critical thinking. I literally think 2 steps ahead. Obviously, for some of you who do not know, I play point guard. So as a point guard, there was no way that you could be successful as with your role on the court unless you're thinking 2 steps ahead. We're not thinking, okay, jump ball. We're thinking when she gets the tap, what play are we going to run? Are they going to be in the zone? Are they going to be in the man? And so that critical thinking of always thinking 2 steps ahead of what's happening, not necessarily not being in the moment, but being able to assess what could potentially happen and having a plan B and a plan C. Not necessarily that you have to overthink something, but you're always thinking 2 steps ahead. That's one of the habits that I think has really kind of transitioned from being a player to a coach, and then now into an entrepreneur, really trying to influence and guide and empower others to do the same. Another habit that I have is I'm very organized. Listen, I write everything down. If I could, I'd be, writing everything that you're asking me, that we're sharing with one another today. But I write everything down. Sometimes when you write it down, you can go back to it the day after or a week later, and it still holds the content. Sometimes trying to keep everything in your head just doesn't work. There's so much, valuable information that you read online or that someone is saying, and it could be just a quick sentence. If you don't write it down and then you get sidetracked, you're like, what did he or she say? And so organization is key, because there are going to be different things that come onto your plate that you're going to have to delegate, you're going to have to manage. And I think that's important. One of the things that I think being a player to a coach was time management. And as you know, as a coach, everything's on the table, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year. And so transitioning from that lifestyle to a lifestyle as an entrepreneur that at times can be 24/7, 365, but realizing that you have to really delegate what's critical, what's important right now, and what isn't. And maybe it's the email from someone you reached out to 2 weeks ago. You might not need to read that in the moment. Instead, you might need to, go over your game plan or your mission statement and just really kind of prioritize, again, 4 quadrants. Is it necessary right this minute? Can it wait? Is it something that needs attention maybe in the next week or so? And then, the last quadrant is something that's just frivolous, something that I can get to when I'm on my downtime, when I'm vacationing, or something that is more recreational. as opposed to, can this help me with my current business? So I think those are the things that are important, in terms of habits, being about your word too, transparency. For some people, that's difficult. I've always been that as a player, as a coach, and now as an entrepreneur. That's probably one of the things that anyone that I've coached or been in contact with will say, Coach K, transparency, honesty and being upfront. And transparency is just, it kind of just, it's almost like a two-way street. It just allows the individual, whoever I'm connecting with or aligning with, to understand this is where I am and this is where I would like to go. And I would like to include you. And if that's okay, great. If not, let's move on. Let's not waste time. Let's not, go around the bush or around the block, two, three. Let's get right to what we both need and want and understand that.
So with that, audience, I tell you, journaling is one of the most amazing things that people can do. I have journals everywhere, like all through my office. I've been journaling since I was a kid because I used to write. I thought I was a poet. So I used to write poetry, and then, went from poetries. Then me and my best friend did these M&Ms. They were ministry monologues, and
wow.
and so it got to writing, and then now to a point where I've written 3 books, working on the 4th book, and but writing's very important. Writing's very important, and it was something that really helped me because I have dyslexia, learning disabilities, but it was something that was allowed me to go back and kind of see the thoughts, because when we're talking, I can write the important stuff, and then my mind remembers just everything around it, but I have to write the important stuff because that's the stuff you don't want to forget. But with that being said, you mentioned time management. So when you talk about time management, what does a day look like for you in the life of Kristeena Alexander? What does that day look like for you?
I gotta start charging people for this one. Well, that's a great question. So traditionally, I'm a morning person. It's funny because I'm a morning person and I'm a late nighter. So I'm a late night crawler.
Running both ends, huh?
Right, both ends. I'm there. So I am a morning person. I do enjoy getting up as early as possible. Whether that I used to get up at 5. Now I'm more like a 6. I tend to really just open up my eyes and just kind of just think about the gratitude part. Allowing whatever my dreams were, however I went to bed the night before, to allow that to just kind of settle me. Then I get into basically, okay, what does the day look like? What does the morning before 12 p.m. look like for me? And that may constitute, whether it's my social media stuff, I do all my own, I haven't, if anyone's looking to come on board, great, but I do all my social media, just ensuring that the content that I put out, it's for someone else, whatever I've gained, whether that is listening to maybe 15, 20 minutes podcast. I'm an Audible kind of girl. I love reading, but I also love hearing. So that's probably like my morning. I do have a day job, so I kind of, depending on what's needed with that. I currently, my day job is I work for a company called Equinox. I am the manager. And so I have about maybe 45, 50 trainers that I actually manage and influence and really encourage them to take their careers professionally in the fitness industry. How do we kind of stay gainfully employed? And so I just figure out what my to-do list looks like for that day. And then roughly around lunchtime, I'll engage in maybe that's some phone calls, some emails, to really just staying connected with, quote unquote, my network. I think that's really important. That's not something that you just kind of get to once a month or, every quarter. That's something that has to be on a daily basis, connecting not just what you need, but what you can offer. I think, some people tend to forget that yes, I'm an entrepreneur, I own my own business, but I'm also in the service industry. Like, it's about giving what I know and what I've experienced, the things that have been good and bad for me, and making sure that someone else understands my story, hears it, because maybe that's helping them. Without me saying too much, that could be just enough. Typically, my evenings are where I like to, like you said, journalize. I'm a writer, so I definitely write, if not everything, as much as I can, and just try to collect my thoughts. And then it's really just trying to soliciting, who's my next clientele. We talk about platform. Obviously, I'm in the fitness industry, but my connection is still to female student athletes, whether you still have eligibility or not. A lot of my friends are still in the coaching industry, so I'm still connected to what's happening in terms of rules and regulations. But that's typically my day. Late at night is when I think I get my aha moments. Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is what happened today. I need to kind of, take a step back. I always call it maybe a sidestep, shuffle or two, and just kind of regroup and refocus, because nothing is ever perfect. And I definitely do not want to come across as that. I do not want to come across as my journey being that. If anything, I'm always reworking, replugging, and just trying to figure out, how I can be the best version of me for you, whatever that may be.
Yeah. So with that, real quick, what is something you do to promote your visualization? You said something about, visualizing your day. What is something? Is there a quote? Is there something you do?
Morning nuggets. Listen, I provide the morning nugget for some folks who follow me, for some folks who have just heard. I've been doing this since probably 2012, 13, just putting out the morning nugget. And so what I'm doing is I'm sharing, whether it's a story that I've dealt with a client of mine, or just from a personal experience. And so I've kind of transitioned to video now, and it's good to kind of hear someone's voice, but it's also good to kind of see. Sometimes I delve a little bit deeper, sometimes I do not. I'd say stay tuned. In the next week or two, I'll be sending out newsletters just to kind of engage a little bit more people who are not social media savvy. But I put out the morning nugget because it's something every morning that I've either taken in that I should give, that I want to give, or there's something that's near and dear to me that I definitely want to share. So,
yeah. Awesome. So what books are you reading, and or a book that you would suggest?
Oh, wow. That's a good one. Well, like I mentioned, I am an Audible kind of girl. And so right now, the book that I'm reading is called The 4 Hour Work Week.
Okay.
That's one of the books. The other one is called Silent Seasons. So for some of my readers, some of my followers who are not spiritual, I'm faithful. I do believe. And so the Silent Seasons is a really good book that really talks about when you're trying to collaborate and move from, again, one season to the next, whether it's spring, the fall, summer, the winter, sometimes you reap what you sow. And so you really have to understand when it's the sowing season, what's happening.
Yep.
And then when it's time for you to reap those benefits, how are you going to process that and really apply it to what's needed for you? Sometimes we receive gifts and blessings, and we're all over the place with it. So it's important. This book is a really good read about really just understanding what those seasons are. And then sometimes it's not your time. And when it's not your time, it's not that you weren't good enough or that you did it wrong. It's a timing piece. And so those are the two books that I'm currently reading right now. Another book that I recommend is called Essentialism.
Okay.
Oh, it's awesome. And Relational Intelligence.
Okay.
That's another book. When I referenced earlier about assignment, advisor, it's really understanding the people that come into your life, what role do they play? Too often we want people to be something that they're not. In coaching, we always, I recruited this young lady. We want her to be an All-American. We want her to be the starter. And it was never in her to be that. She was going to be the sixth man. But if we can find ways to really utilize her as the sixth man, she was actually a key component in winning that championship. And so the book Relational Intelligence.
I piggyback on that because so many people need to hear that. And I really believe the gift in coaching that I had was seeing that very thing, like seeing people for who they were and accepting the very thing that they were and not trying to make them into something that I wanted them to be in. And so, and I feel like players, I feel like as I have sit down and looked at some organizations that I've worked with, the biggest thing I'm seeing is people in leadership positions or management positions don't understand the people and don't understand the value and the roles to put their people in. And so they either fire them because they don't understand them because they have the power to fire them, and or they misunderstand them because they don't have the empathy or the willingness to slow down and say, let me adjust. As a leader, let me adjust. And so it's really critical that you say that, because I think a lot of people in leadership, a lot of them aren't leaders, they just manage. But then two, those that lead, that's something that you bring up that is really important, that they understand their people and know what roles they fit. And so, quick example, my wife just took a job at a hospital, and there was a lady, her manager, which I call her leader, her manager went to a lady that was struggling. They were about to fire her, and she's like, "No, I'm not going to fire you. Let's put you over in this area and see how you do, because it's hard to find loyal, good people who show up every day." And I was like, "Babe," I said, "You know how powerful that was?" And so the lady, one, didn't get fired. Two, is over here doing amazing stuff because she put her in a role that helped her.
I agree with you on that.
And so in your position, we have 2 minutes left. I don't want to take all your time. I know you're an entrepreneur. We got 30 minutes for this, but in if you were going to have a book written about you, okay, what is that title name? What's the title of that book?
It's just gonna say transition.
Transition. Okay.
Just transition, because I think you touched upon it. A lot of people manage and don't lead. The transition is always happening. It's evolving. Whether that was from player to coach, coach to entrepreneur, even now going from student athletes that still have eligibility to not. It's really just solving the issue of understanding self. And so that transition evolves. It happens every year. It's going to happen 2 days from now after we see this, on your podcast. And I'm a believer in you, Q. You know that the transition never stops. And so I think if we can identify where we are on that journey and really just understand what the ultimate goal is, we can continue to transition all that we want. Transition is often looked at as a negative thing.
Man,
to me, transition is a positive thing.
Come on.
If you're not transitioning, then you're stuck.
You're stuck.
And if you're stuck, then that's a whole nother issue. You can reach out to progressrecruiting.com and we can help you with that as well.
I heard that. That's why this is called Full Court Press, because I love to be in transition. That's how we score.
There you go.
And so last thing is before I go, my last question. If you're going to be in a movie, okay, and I got this from Hernando, Coach H. If you're going to be in a movie, who is playing you?
Ooh, that's a good one. Who would play me? Ooh. I don't know. I might have to put a survey out.
Okay.
I might have to ask a couple people in my network that I have had the opportunity to influence, engage with. I don't know. Can I come back to you that one?
Yeah, we can, because I'm going to have you back. So last thing here is, how can people get a hold of you? How can people reach you? And so that they can use your services.
Absolutely. So you can go to progressrecruiting.com. That's progressrecruiting.com. Email is Coach K. That's my first name, Kristeena with the K. Do not forget the 2 E's. Coach K at progressrecruiting.com. And then obviously phone number 202-577-9075.
All righty. Well, sister, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to be with us. I'm going to have you back. There's some things that I've got to get you a part of this Coaching from the Heart co-authoring program, because I would love to have your story in there. And if there's anything you need from Kristeena, again, I will have her information attached to whatever we have posted so that you can reach out to her.
Appreciate you, Q.
Thank you so much for being here today. I love you, and keep grinding.
Absolutely. Thank you, Q. Appreciate you.
All righty.